Editorial note. The security of the Imperium is a heavy burden. It is one that few could ever stand to bear, and fewer will have the fortitude to. If there's one thing I learned by following Sablon in my youth, it was that sometimes in order to see the larger picture, you are required to remove certain smaller obstacles in your way. And for any other Inquisitor, I'm sure the solution to this orc problem on Heathmore would have been simple. Simply exterminatus the planet. Destroy any evidence that they were ever here and start over. The humans on this world were primitive, power-hungry, and basic. They warred so fervently that it wasn't even out of necessity anymore, but simply blind honor and pride. At this point in my career, I still had very little love for the concept of battle honor. Though I respected the warrior cultures of these people, I still had trouble wrapping my mind around senseless death in the name of something so petty as honor. Honor is something best swept aside so that we can better appreciate the larger picture of things. This orc incursion, as large as it was barely an afterthought compared to the goings-on of the rest of the galaxy. Necrons waking up across the segmentum, Tyranid Hive Fleet Leviathan still lumbering its way across space, and even a report of some stirring near the Eye of Terror that could mean something as large as a Black Crusade. So why even care about this simple little war between primitive humans and orcs lacking firearms? The answer was simple. Curiosity. Emperor Damitol Sablon's desire to see this project to the end had infected me too, and at that point in time I still had no idea just how big of a mess we were about to find ourselves in. If I just exterminatus the entire planet, then every pain, agony, and loss we suffered might well have been avoided. And there are moments I feel I regret my decision to see this through, but regrets are like the promises of heretics. You'll hear them often, but they're all meaningless in the end and solve nothing. And in either case, a great change was about to befall the people of Heathmoor. The orc incursion was about to reach its final phase, its zenith, if you will. On the slopes of the volcanic mountain, the forces of Heathmoor were making their final stand. The noble Legion of Ashfeld, joined by the Royal Legion and the Valiant Legion, all had sworn to defend the mountain. The Iron Legion was still not in attendance. Over half the Mire had come as well, with daimyo from across the Dawn Empire swearing their swords to Tomoe's leadership. And need I even mention that all of Valkenheim followed Aella, the Jarl of Hrafenfeld, marching now to the slopes with their literal scores of Vikings? The Blue Dragon Corps had yet to arrive, but they had their reasons for not coming, and I asked my readers to simply wait patiently for that little revelation to reveal itself. I've collected a copy of the battle journal of William of Oxshire as he prepared to defend this world, and I do believe you'll find it as entertaining as I did. From The Battle for Heathmoor, by William of Oxshire. The sky was dark, and I felt the unease in my flesh and my feet. The volcano itself seemed angry, like the very air itself was unhappy with our presence there. I couldn't say I didn't share that sentiment. I stood in the command tent, poring over the battle lines and maps of the region. The air was stuffy and hot. It was uncomfortable in my armor, but I kept it on out of, well, I guess you could say I kept it on out of instinct. It felt calming, even if uncomfortable. Tomoe stood with me, as did Aella, all looking at the table expectantly, as though they expected me to suddenly explain the perfect strategy. I did have a strategy, but it was far from perfect, and they weren't shy about pointing it out. I still say we try to spread them out, give them a larger area to charge at. It will thin their numbers and allow us a more easy advantage of them, Aella offered. No, I answered. At the Hrafenfeld battle, I watched these savages rip each other apart just to get at us. If we keep them bunched together, we'll make them fall on each other, thinning them before they can even reach us. That itself is a good strategy. But you realize that your plan to keep them that way will cost us greatly, Tomoe offered. Never thought I'd hear a samurai shrink back from sacrifice, Aella pointed out. We lay down our lives for duty and honor. But this is a risk that I don't think will create opportunity, she countered. My concern, I grumbled, is their leader. Peacekeeper reports tell us that they have some kind of chief or commander that the smaller orcs look up to. And he's no fool. He's organized wolf cavalry for the smaller greenies. They domesticated wolves? Tomoe blinked. Is it so surprising? Aella pointed out. Astria and the Order of Horkots has domesticated them before. But it gets worse, I growled, ignoring them. Apparently, their leader is smarter than his kin. He started organizing their forces. Scout reports indicate he separated his forces, a few breaking off and moving just north of the main battle line. He wasn't smart enough to hide their movements, but it's obvious he intends to flank us. I moved my finger away from the main battlefield to a tall cluster of hills to the west. They'll come from here, charge down and crash into us in the midst of the fighting. I presume you have a plan for that? Ale asked. I'm open to suggestions, but our only advantage is that we'll see them coming well before they hit us. Not much of an advantage, Tomoe spat. What good is knowing they're coming if we lack the means to stop them? Do we have time to set pitfalls? Or perhaps some kind of trap for them? Ayala asked. Nothing that would slow them down worth a damn. The best we can do is position some heavy hitters along the hills to try to hold them a while. We just lose good men to gain nothing, Ayala argued. I can't risk the whole Highlander force on them. And the Shugoki guards would be slaughtered. And if we pull too many of them away from the main battle, it won't matter either way, I muttered. We need more men. Where is the Iron Legion? Hale argued. Didn't you reach out to them? The new warlord of the Iron Legion is Derek of Faldmarsh. He and I have a history. He doesn't trust me any further than he could throw a Shugoki. There's no chance he'd condone a full mobilization. I've sent words to a few other groups, but... What groups? Tomoe asked. I didn't answer. You called for Chimera and Horkos, didn't you? like Horkos would ever come to our aid, Ayala sneered. We're in no position to discount anyone at this point, I replied. Chimera might come, I suppose, if they got their heads out of their ass and stopped hibernating in their little coastal fortress. And as for Horkos, I don't exactly like what they do. Rather, I hate all of it, but they care about this world too in their own twisted way. They might be willing to offer some degree of aid. Hopefully. Editorial note. Horkos and Chimera. As I said before, the warriors of Heathmore were locked in combat between four primary factions, the Knights, Samurai, Vikings, and Wulin. However, as the faction war began to wane, two new forces rose up to reignite a brand new civil war. One was the Order of Horkos, started by a zealot disciple of Apollyon named Astria, who claimed to have heard a god named Horkos call to her and order her to carry on Apollyon's work. The Order of Horkos believes firmly in power over all things, and that only the strong deserve to rule, while the weak exist only to feed the mighty. They had been running a tyrannical takeover of the world for Heathmore. To counter them, though, rose a resistance organization called Chimera, run by two of Apollyon's former soldiers, her second-in-command Holden Cross, who now goes by the name of Griffin, and a former warlord of Apollyon's named Hervis Daubeny. Both have worked to try and form peaceful relations between the factions and restore order and peace to the world, but to almost no avail. The general consensus for most of Heathmoor is that while Chimera preaches peace, they are effectively sterile, unable to truly dislodge or stop Horkos, and while Horkos is zealous and power-hungry, they are too overeager and often hurt themselves by overplaying their hands and killing too many civilians and burning too much land to the point it hurts their cause. In essence, it has become an endless civil war. How unlike anything we see in the wider galaxy, yes? Then is this the plan, Night Warden? What can we do? Tomoe asked. I stepped over the map and indicated the large field below the volcano on the southernmost territory. What we know is this is where the primary forces will arrive tomorrow morning. We'll meet them here. I have artillery aimed directly at the midway point of the battlefield. If we can slow their numbers enough and get them to bunch up, we can destroy their front lines with the catapults. The problem is getting them to stop. Any suggestions? My Shugoki gods can hold them, Tomoe offered. As can the Highlanders and the warlords. I can dispatch a large number of my finest to the front to meet them, Aela agreed. They don't need to win. They just need to slow the advance. Make them hesitate. Give them a new target. If anything, they'll get so distracted fighting our forward lines that they won't even think about getting through them. Once their advance is stopped, I'll give a signal for the heavy vanguard to disengage. Then we bombard them with the catapults. That won't be enough, Aela sighed. The size of their force is unbelievable. All we do is thin their front ranks. Exactly, but the size of the boulders we'll throw will force them to go around them, breaking their formation. Any cohesion they have will be lost. Tomoe, you'll have horse archers right along the outer flanks of their forces and pick off those that try to get on the outside. Meanwhile, we'll send assassins into the fray and incapacitate any that straggle or pull away. With their formation broken and their flanks damaged, this will prepare us for the third phase of the plan. A normal force would panic and run at this point, Tomoe growled. Is that your plan? No, I answered honestly. We've seen how the orcs fight. Panicking and running isn't their preferred fallback. In fact, if anything, it's the opposite. I expect they'll fight even harder because of this tactic. I then indicated the back of the formation on the map. Gaius will launch another signal, and then the infantry will deploy and begin engaging the orcs that survive. Have your horsemen engage the flanks, and we'll trap them in a U formation. Their attention will be divided, and it will allow us to put pressure on their forces. We don't have the numbers to do this effectively, Ayala pointed out. Their rear guard will just break off and outflank us. Not if my plan works. According to our reports, the war boss that we were talking about is stationed near the rear of the pack. I'm going to flank around with a small group and try to take him out. With the war boss dead, the chain of command will crumble, and the intelligence of the orc formation will crumble with it. We'll be able to overwhelm them. That is an enormous gamble, Tomoe hissed. You're banking the survival of this battle, our chances of winning, on you killing the war boss while we buy you a distraction? And even if you do kill them, that still doesn't solve the issue of the orcs on the hill, Ayala added. We can help with that. All three of us did not hear her enter, but when we looked up, there she stood in her dark armor, the warmonger Helena, leader of the Sisters of Lupin. To my surprise, the sisters had not abandoned us after the fight of Hrafnfell. Helena had seen fit to remain, as had my sister and the others. Helena? I asked. As we proved during the Hrafnfell battle, our corruption is effective on the greenskins. The Sisters of Lupin will go to the base of the hill and meet the enemy. We might not win, but we will buy you time to kill the war boss. I'm not going to throw your lives away, I argued. Yes, so I've been told by your sister, Helena muttered. But you should remember, Night Warden, that this is war. And in war, lives are lost. Not needlessly, Tomoe grumbled. So what would you propose, then? Have you an alternative? Simply pray that Horkos or Chimera hears your call for aid and they arrive? Hope for a miracle that the Iron Legion decides to turn around and come help? Or maybe that the Wulin finally decide that they give a damn about this land and its people? What miracle do you pray for, Night Warden? I didn't respond to her, because I knew she was right. Any other option would have to be a miracle. How long can you give us? I asked. I can't know for sure. Well, then at least bring some of my forces to accompany you. That won't be necessary. I'll have a few of my forces accompany you, Tomoe offered. A few Hitakiri and Aramusha. They can help you in the battle. I insist, she said before Helena could talk over her. I gotta give Tomoe this. She was persuasive and firm. Even Helena didn't seem fit to argue. Helena looked to me, and I nodded back. We can spare that much. Take them. No one's sitting on the sidelines of this battle anyway, so we might as well put them to use. As you wish, Helena sighed. If I should die tomorrow, Night Warden, I want you to know. It has been an honor. She gave a polite bow, then turned to walk away, and I suddenly stepped forward. Wait, Helena. I need a favor, please. Can you call my sister here? I want to see her before the battle. I'll inform her, but she's not here. I've sent her ahead to scout an ambush location for the operation. When she's done, I'll send her back. Helena agreed before continuing out of the tent. Make peace while you can, Night Warden, Ayala growled. I fear we might not live through this. Ayala, if we fail, this whole world is doomed. If I can't make peace with that, what can I? Legends say our people survived the cataclysm over a millennium ago. And now it will be these green demons that end our existence? What a cruel twist of fate, Tomoe growled. That strange inquisitor said that he knew of these creatures. Surely he has some means of fighting them. Did he provide any ideas or directives? Ayala asked. He simply restated their resilience, and that fire was a most effective tool in disposing of the bodies, but otherwise, no, he didn't give any real advice. Because in truth, there is no advice I can give in this regard. An orc invasion of this size could usually be handled quite easily by 1 or 2 Imperial Guard regiments, but the Guard have access to technology, resources, weapons, and armor that are sorely lacking on this planet, so no advice I could offer would serve them any good. I can't exactly arm these primitives with las rifles or bolt guns. That technology would spin their heads and provide more questions than answers. And besides, if anything, the fact that the orcs themselves were in a primitive state as well helped to even the battlefield. Before any more words could be exchanged between us, a young peacekeeper rushed into the tent and bowed. "They come," she said. "The orcs will be upon us by sunrise." I looked to the east and saw the sky beginning to turn bright. We had an hour or two at most. I turned to my compatriots and sighed, accepting what was to come, whatever it was. "Prepare yourselves. It seems our destiny awaits us with the rising sun."